Have you seen Rang De Basanti? Do you remember Amir Khan's name in Rang De Basanti? Well, I asked a number of people and they said his name in the movie was DJ. But actually, his name in the movie was Diljit. But he was called DJ most of the time, so people remember him as DJ. Why is this so? This is because it is easier to remember and recall shorter names. Similarly, in chemistry, there are 118 elements discovered so far, and all have big names. So it's not easy to remember, write, and use these names again and again. It becomes a very tedious process. So scientists wanted symbols for these elements. The first scientist who proposed figurative symbols for these elements was John Dalton. He proposed figurative symbols for these elements. So according to John Dalton, oxygen can be represented by a circle, hydrogen with a circle and a dot inside, nitrogen a circle and a line inside, and so on. But if you will see, it's not very easy to remember these figurative symbols. For example, if I ask you, what is the symbol of sodium? You might get confused between potassium and sodium. Sodium is a circle with 2 lines and potassium is a circle with 3 lines in between. So to use these symbols is difficult. It's not very easy to remember these figurative symbols. Then another scientist named Berzelius came up with another system. According to him, the symbols of the elements should be the first letter of the element name. So he proposed that the first letter of the element name should be used as the symbol. So for carbon, the first letter is C. So the symbol for carbon is capital C. Similarly, sulfur, the first letter is S. So the symbol is capital S. Keep in mind, we always write the capital letters while writing the symbols. Similarly, for oxygen, it is capital O, and for hydrogen, it is capital H. But at times, when the first symbol is already used, what do? For example, in case of calcium, capital C is already the symbol of carbon, so we cannot use capital C. In such cases, Berzelius suggested that we use the first 2 letters of the element name. So for calcium, it becomes Ca. Now keep in mind, whenever we write the first 2 letters, the first letter is always a capital letter followed by a small letter. Similarly, silicon, the first letter S is already used. It is the symbol of sulfur. So in case of silicon, it gets its symbol from the first 2 letters. So it becomes Si. Similarly, for osmium, since O is the symbol for oxygen, we write Os. H is the symbol for hydrogen. So for helium, it becomes He. So whenever the first letter is already used, Berzelius suggested that we use the first 2 letters. The first letter is always a capital letter followed by a small letter. What is the symbol of oxygen? The symbol of oxygen is the first letter in this case, that is capital O. Now in some cases, for example, iron and potassium. Iron, its symbol is Fe, and for potassium, the symbol is K. But I do not see any Fe in iron, neither do I see any K in potassium. So where do such elements get their name? Some elements get their names from their Latin names. For example, iron, its Latin name is ferrum. So we get the first 2 letters, that is Fe, as the symbol of iron. Similarly, potassium, its Latin name is kalium. So it gets its symbol from the first letter, that is capital K. Similarly, copper, it gets its name from the Latin name cuprum. We use the first 2 letters, and for gold, we use Au. So some elements, they get their symbols from their Latin names. Now, there are some miscellaneous cases as well. For example, magnesium. The symbol of magnesium is Mg. It's neither the first letter nor the first two letters. It is a combination of the first letter and the third letter. Similarly, if you look at silver, it gets its name from the Latin name argentum. But in this case, we use the first letter and the third letter. So some miscellaneous cases are also used. This was done to avoid any discrepancy. Now don't worry, once you start using these symbols again and again, it becomes very easy to remember and memorize them.